Once upon a time, in the peaceful village of Agunji, people lived like one big family, always looking out for one another. The village was known for its calm and simple way of life, where neighbors shared everything from food to stories. However, not everyone embraced this close bond. Madame Bola, one of the wealthiest women in Agunji, was proud and often looked down on those she considered beneath her. With her head held high, she walked through the village as though everyone around her was invisible. Many people quietly talked about her arrogance, but no one dared to confront her. On the other side of the village lived Sade, a 10-year-old girl with a heart full of kindness. She lived with her widowed mother, Mama Ifeoma, and although they were poor, they always found joy in each other's company. Sade was polite, hard-working, and always helped her mother with chores around the house. Despite their struggles, Sade's heart was pure and she always smiled, ready to help anyone in need. For some unknown reason, Madame Bola began to pick on Sade. She would mock the girl's clothes, insult her, and chase her away whenever she came near. Despite the hurtful behavior, Sade remained respectful, hoping one day things would get better. Madame Bola was very cruel to Sade. Every time she saw her, she would call her hurtful names like beggar girl or rag child. Madame Bola would laugh at Sade, making fun of her torn clothes and the way she looked. "You look like you came from the streets," she would say, loud enough for everyone to hear. Her words hurt Sadie deeply, but she stayed quiet and never answered back. Madame Bola's cruelty didn't stop there. She would often chase Sade away from her compound, telling her she was not welcome. Sade would leave, feeling embarrassed and sad, but she never stopped trying to be kind. She would walk away with her head down, but she never complained. The other villagers saw how Madame Bola treated Sade. They felt sorry for the little girl, but they were too scared to say anything. Madame Bola was very powerful in the village. She had money and influence, and no one wanted to upset her. They feared that if they spoke out against her, Madame Bola would make their lives difficult. So they kept silent, even though they knew what she was doing was wrong. Sade's mother, Mama Ifeoma, always told Sade to be strong. "Don't let her words hurt you," Mama Ifeoma would say. "People like Madame Bola are cruel because they don't understand kindness. You must always be respectful no matter what she says." Mama Ifeoma taught Sade to stay calm and kind, even when others were unkind. Sade listened to her mother, even though it was difficult. Despite the constant bullying, Sade continued to help Madame Bola whenever she needed it. If Madame Bola asked her to run an errand, Sade would do it without complaining. She hoped that one day, Madame Bola would see her kindness and change her heart. But each time she helped, Madame Bola only insulted her more. Still, Sade never gave up on being kind, believing that one day things would be different. Even though Madame Bola warned her son, Tunde, to avoid Sade, the two children became friends. Tunde, who was 8 years old, was often sick and very lonely. He didn't have many friends, and his mother's harsh attitude made him feel even more isolated. But Sade, with her cheerful smile and kind heart, made him feel better. Every time they played together, Sade would make him laugh with her funny stories and games. Tunde enjoyed spending time with her because she made him feel special, and for the first time, he had someone who cared for him. Sade loved seeing Tunde happy. Whenever he felt too weak to play outside, she would sit with him under the big tree near his house and tell him stories about the village and the animals in the forest. She always tried to lift his spirits, even when he felt too tired to talk. Slowly, Tunde began to look forward to these moments, and the sadness in his eyes started to fade. One afternoon, as Sade passed by Madame Bola's house on her way home, she heard voices coming from the window. She stopped and quietly listened to the conversation between Madame Bola and a visitor. The visitor was a businessman, and Madame Bola was talking to him about her husband's business problems. "My husband's business is failing," Madame Bola said, her voice filled with frustration. "We're struggling to maintain the life we used to have. The money is running out, and soon we won't have the luxury we're used to." Sade felt a pang of sympathy for Madame Bola and her family. She had always seen Madame Bola as a woman of strength and pride, but hearing this conversation made Sade realize that even the rich could have struggles. Sade thought of Tunde, who was already facing sickness and loneliness, and she felt sorry for him. She wished there was something she could do to help them both. In the following days, Sade made small efforts to brighten Tunde's world. She picked some fruits from her mother's garden and brought them to Tunde, hoping to share a little joy. "These are from my mother's trees," Sade said, handing him the fruits with a smile. "I thought you might like them." Tunde's face lit up with happiness. He loved the fruits, and it was a small kindness that made his day better. Said also continued to tell Tunde stories to keep his mind off his illness. She would sit by his side, weaving tales of heroes and adventure, making him laugh and forget his worries. Every time Sade visited, Tunde's spirits seemed to lift a little more. He began to feel a little stronger, a little more hopeful. But Madame Bola was not happy with Sade's visits. She noticed the girl coming to her house almost every day, and her jealousy and anger grew. One evening, as Sade walked towards the gate to leave after spending time with Tunde, Madame Bola appeared at the door. Her face was red with fury and her eyes were filled with suspicion. "Where do you think you're going?" Madame Bola shouted. "What do you think you're doing here?" Sade was taken aback by the anger in Madame Bola's voice. "I was just spending time with Tunde," she said softly, feeling nervous. Madame Bola's eyes narrowed. "Spending time with Tunde? You think you can just come into my house whenever you like and steal from me?" she accused, her voice cold and harsh. "I know what you're up to. You think you can take advantage of us because we are struggling. Well, I won't let you." Sade stood frozen, shocked by the accusation. "No, Madame Bola, I would never steal from you. I just want to help Tunde." Madame Bola stepped forward, pointing at the gate. "I don't want to see your face here again. You are not welcome in my house. Leave now." With her heart pounding, Sade turned and left. She felt sad and confused, but she didn't say a word. She didn't understand why Madame Bola thought she was trying to take advantage of them. Sade only wanted to be kind, but her kindness was misunderstood. As she walked home, she couldn't help but wonder why Madame Bola was so angry. She thought back to the conversation she had overheard about the business troubles. Was Madame Bola's anger because of their financial problems? Sade didn't know, but she decided not to give up on being kind. She would keep helping Tunde in her own way, even if it meant doing so from a distance. After all, she had always believed that kindness could make a difference, and she wasn't about to stop now. One stormy evening, the wind howled through the village, and the skies were filled with dark clouds. It was a night when the rain poured heavily, soaking the earth. At Madame Bola's house, things were not calm. Her son Tunde had fallen seriously ill. His breathing was shallow and his fever was high. Madame Bola's heart raced with fear as she tried to comfort her son, but nothing seemed to help. Tunde was growing weaker by the hour, and Madame Bola's panic started to rise. She called for the help of the village healer, but the healer's remedies didn't seem to work. The only clinic in the village, Dr. Aid's clinic, was located far away, on the other side of the village. Madame Bola knew that if they didn't get Tunde there quickly, his condition could worsen. But her husband was away on business, and she couldn't get the car out of the garage because of the storm. Desperation set in. Meanwhile, Sade, walking in the rain with her mother, heard whispers of Tunde's illness from another neighbor. Sade's heart sank as she heard the news. Despite everything that had happened between her and Madame Bola, Sade couldn't ignore the fact that Tunde was in need of help. Without thinking twice, she grabbed her umbrella and ran to Madame Bola's house. When Sade arrived, she saw Madame Bola pacing outside, looking extremely worried. Tunde lay inside the house, pale and burning with fever. Sade didn't hesitate. She stepped forward and said, "Madame Bola, I can help. Let me take you to Dr. Aid's clinic. He will be able to treat Tunde." At first, Madame Bola stared at Sade with disbelief. She had been so angry with Sade recently that she couldn't believe the girl would offer to help her son. She had rejected Sade's kindness so many times before, but now, with Tunde's life at risk, Madame Bola was desperate. After a long pause, she reluctantly agreed. "Fine," Madame Bola muttered, "but hurry. I don't know how much time we have left." Sade smiled, relieved that Madame Bola had finally agreed. She took Madame Bola's hand and led her out into the stormy night, the rain soaking their clothes as they hurried toward the clinic. The path was slippery and difficult to walk, but Sade's determination kept her moving. As they walked, Sade tried to reassure Madame Bola, who was clearly worried and anxious. "I know Dr. Ada will help Tunde," Sade said softly. "He's a good doctor." Madame Bola nodded, but remained silent, lost in thought. As they reached the halfway point, Sade decided to share something with Madame Bola. "Madame Bola," she began, her voice calm but full of meaning. "I need to tell you something about my family." Madame Bola looked at Sade, puzzled. "What do you mean?" Sade took a deep breath and continued. "My late father was Dr. Okoye, a respected doctor who built the clinic we're going to. He treated many people in the village for free, helping the poor, the sick, everyone. He was kind and generous. But after he passed away, things changed for us. My mother and I, we couldn't keep up with the cost of living and soon we became poor. The business my father ran couldn't support us anymore, and we had to let go of everything." Madame Bola stopped walking, shocked by what Sade had just revealed. She stood there, rain soaking her, unable to speak for a few moments. It was as if the words hadn't fully sunk in. Your father was Dr. Okoye? Madame Bola asked, her voice shaking with disbelief. The same Dr. Okoye who built the clinic? Sade nodded slowly. Yes, Madame Bola. My father gave everything for this village, and now my mother and I do what we can to survive. Madame Bola stood in silence for a moment, the weight of this new information heavy on her heart. She had never known that Said's family had once been well off and respected. All this time, Madame Bola had treated Said and her mother with scorn, never once thinking that Said's family had been among the village's most important figures. As they continued walking, Said's words echoed in Madame Bola's mind. She realized that Said's kindness wasn't just out of nowhere. It came from a place of great strength and a family legacy built on helping others. Said's bravery in coming to help her son, despite the cruel way Madame Bola had treated her, touched Madame Bola deeply. Said was putting aside the past and offering her help without asking for anything in return. By the time they reached Dr. Aid's clinic, Tunde's condition had worsened. The doctor quickly took charge and with the help of his staff, they worked to stabilize Tunde's health. Madame Bola, overwhelmed with gratitude, watched as Said stood by her side, waiting anxiously for news. Dr. Ade came out after a while, his face calm but serious. Tunde is going to be fine, he said. The fever was dangerously high, but we've managed to bring it down. He needs rest, but he will recover. Madame Bola sighed in relief. She couldn't believe it. Just hours ago, she had thought she might lose her son, and now he was on the path to recovery. She turned to Sade, her eyes filled with gratitude. Said, Madame Bola began, her voice softer than usual. I don't know how to thank you. You saved my son's life tonight. I never knew how much your family had done for this village. Said smiled gently. It's nothing, Madame Bola. I just wanted to help, and I know you love Tunde. Madame Bola felt a lump form in her throat. She had been so wrong about Said and her family. She had judged them based on their current status, not knowing the struggles they had been through. And now, as she stood there, looking at the girl who had helped her son, she realized that sometimes the greatest strength came not from wealth, but from the heart. I am sorry, Sade, Madame Bola said quietly, her voice full of regret. I was wrong to treat you the way I did. Your kindness, your strength, has taught me something I will never forget. Said looked at Madame Bola with understanding. It's okay, Madame Bola. We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them. As they left the clinic that night, Madame Bola's heart was filled with gratitude and a newfound respect for the girl she had once looked down on. The storm had passed, but it wasn't just the weather that had changed. Something deep within Madame Bola had shifted, and for the first time, she saw Said for who she truly was, a kind, strong, and capable young girl, full of potential and heart. Tunde's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. After receiving treatment at Dr. Aid's clinic, he slowly regained his strength. The fever that had once burned him so fiercely began to subside, and his bright eyes returned to their usual sparkle. Madame Bola stayed by his side, grateful beyond words for Sade's help. The worry that had once consumed her was now replaced with deep gratitude. Tunde was going to be okay, all thanks to Sade's quick thinking and her willingness to step in when Madame Bola had no one else to turn to. Over the next few days, Madame Bola found herself thinking a lot about the events that had transpired. She couldn't help but feel ashamed of the way she had treated Said. She had been cruel, judgmental, and unfair, all because of her pride and the difference in their social status. Madame Bola knew that her actions had hurt Said, and her heart ached with regret. One morning, as she sat by the window looking out at the village, she made a decision. She had to make things right. Madame Bola couldn't undo the past, but she could change the future. And so, she resolved to apologize to Sade and to Mama Ifeoma, Sade's mother, for everything she had done. The next day, Madame Bola went to Mama Ifeoma's house. She stood at the door for a moment, her hands trembling with uncertainty. But she knew she had to do this. Finally, she knocked. Mama Ifeoma opened the door and looked at Madame Bola, surprised but curious. Madame Bola, she said quietly, what brings you here? I need to talk to you, Madame Bola began, her voice soft and filled with remorse. I have wronged you and your daughter Sade in ways that I can never fully explain. I have treated you both poorly, and I am truly sorry for the pain I've caused. Mama Ifeoma stood silent for a moment, studying Madame Bola. There was a long pause, as if she were weighing the sincerity of the apology. Finally, she nodded. I appreciate your words, Madam Bola. We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn and grow from them. Madam Bola's eyes filled with tears, grateful for Mama Ifeoma's understanding. I have learned, she said, and I want to make it right. A few days later, Madame Bola visited Sade at her home. The young girl had been busy helping her mother with chores, but she stopped when she saw Madame Bola standing at the door. Hello, Sade, Madame Bola said gently. I've come to speak with you. Sade looked up at her, unsure of what to expect. Madame Bola continued. I want to apologize for the way I treated you. I was wrong to call you names and judge you based on what I thought about your family. You have shown me kindness and strength, and I have hurt you in return. For that, I am truly sorry. Said remained quiet for a moment, looking at Madame Bola's face. She could see the sincerity in her eyes, and she knew that Madame Bola had truly changed. Slowly, Said smiled and said, Thank you, Madame Bola. I understand. It's okay. Madame Bola's heart swelled with relief. She had been afraid that Sade would never forgive her, but the young girl's kindness and maturity were beyond her expectations. It was a humbling moment for Madame Bola, one that made her realize just how much she had to learn about humility and compassion. As a way to make amends, Madame Bola decided to support Sade's education. She spoke to Mama Ifeoma about it and promised to pay for Sade's school fees and other educational needs. I want to honor your father's legacy, Madame Bola told them. Your father was a great man, and his work helped so many people in this village. I want to give Sade the opportunity to follow in his footsteps, to become someone who makes a difference. Mama Ifeoma was speechless with gratitude. She had never imagined that Madame Bola would offer such help. Thank you, Madame Bola. This means the world to us. As word of Madame Bola's change of heart spread through the villagers couldn't believe it. The once proud and harsh woman was now treating everyone with kindness and respect. She began using her influence to help others, offering support to families in need and donating to the clinic that her father had once built. People who had once feared her now looked at her with admiration, and the village started to see a new side of Madame Bola, a side that cared for others, not just for herself. Madame Bola's transformation was slow, but it was steady. She began to take part in community meetings, listening to the concerns of others, and offering her help whenever possible. She also made it a point to visit the sick and elderly, bringing them food and medicine. Her once cold, distant demeanor was replaced by warmth and generosity. She had learned the true meaning of community and how important it was to care for those around her. For Sade, things began to change too. With Madame Bola's support, she was able to attend school regularly, where her natural intelligence and caring nature made her a favorite among her teachers. As she grew older, Sade became a beacon of hope for others, just like her father had been. She began tutoring other children in the village, sharing the gift of education that Madame Bola had given her. The once lonely and bullied girl was now thriving, her potential recognized and nurtured. Madame Bola, too, found peace. She had been given the chance to make things right, and she took it. She had no more room for pride or bitterness in her heart. The village, once divided by her influence, had become united in a spirit of kindness and understanding. And for the first time in years, Madame Bola felt truly at peace, knowing that she had redeemed herself and healed the wounds of the past. In the end, the story of Madame Bola and Sade became a lesson to everyone in the village, that redemption and reconciliation are possible, even after years of hardship and misunderstanding. It showed that kindness, humility, and a willingness to change could transform not only individuals but entire communities. And most importantly, it reminded everyone that no matter how difficult life may seem, there is always room for growth, healing, and second chances. Sade's unwavering kindness, courage, and resilience created a ripple of change in Madame Bola's heart and life. The once proud and dismissive woman transformed into someone who valued kindness over wealth and status. Her apology to Sade and Mama Ifeoma marked the beginning of a new chapter, not just for herself, but for the entire village. Madame Bola's newfound humility inspired others to look beyond social divides and appreciate the strength of compassion and understanding. Tunde and Sade's friendship grew even stronger. Their bond became a symbol of hope and unity in the community, showing that love and respect can overcome even the deepest differences. Madame Bola and Mama Ifeoma's families found common ground, developing a relationship built on mutual respect and support. The village of Agunji flourished as its people learned the value of forgiveness and reconciliation. Madame Bola's actions became a reminder that change is always possible, no matter how deep one's flaws may seem. This story is a testament to the power of kindness and understanding. It teaches us that no matter our differences, we can come together, forgive, and build a brighter future for everyone. Let us always choose compassion over pride and understanding over judgment. This story of Said and Madame Bola reminds us of the importance of humility, empathy, and courage. Madame Bola learned that true wealth is not measured by material possessions, but by the kindness and compassion we show to others. Said's unwavering strength teaches us to stand up for what is right, even when faced with cruelty and injustice. Let this tale inspire us to treat everyone with respect, no matter their status, and to extend kindness even when it's undeserved. Remember, forgiveness has the power to heal, and empathy can bridge the width. Thank you for joining us on this heartwarming journey. If you enjoyed this story and the lessons it carries, please hit the subscribe button and share it with your friends and family. Don't forget to like this video and stay tuned for more inspiring African tales that touch the heart and uplift the spirit. See you in the next story.